How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, are still.
Fenurian.
And Volacel, and we're here to bring the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week, along with whatever stuff we've been doing and anything else that happens to cross our mind today. But first of all, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. You can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord chat server, most easily accessed by going to vtwproductions.com and clicking on our show logo on any of our recent show posts, which will take you directly to our Discord server where you can chat with the hosts and other listeners to the show in real time at any time.
Yes, do it now. So, on the stream today, I'm going to play a little bit more Satisfactory, but because there hasn't been any major changes in the game, there's not a whole lot to talk about there. I will try to be less bad at it this time. I'll admit I'm actually multitasking, 3-4 ways, I suppose, while I'm doing the show, so that's part of it.
So I'm going to pitch an idea, since I know we actually have live listeners. I might try this.
Uh-oh.
After the show, I'm just grinding skill points right now because I can't focus on two things at once. But after the show, I am thinking of live streaming all my attempts of the bonus boss in Sekiro, because I'm up to him now. The bonus super duper hard boss, and just seeing how long it takes and how far we get.
Before Rage Quit?
Yeah, see if we can do it before I pass out or rage quit. Well, I don't really rage quit. I just say I'll come back tomorrow when I can think clearer after I've got some
It's
sleep.
kind of a soft Rage Quit.
It's more like I'm just exhausted right now, and I need a fresh set of eyes to look at this thing, just rest my brain, and reset it.
Yeah, it's more like, I don't have the energy left to rage.
Yeah, I am defeated.
No, it's okay. But yeah, that's the thing I might do. So if people are interested, I will throw the stream up and put the link up in the the announcement thread and the live show chat thread, and we'll see how it goes after the show.
I suppose the other option is Vol and I throwing up Monster Hunter World and mourning
Failing.
the complete absence of Streamstones.
Ugh. Just deeply traumatizing to me at the moment.
There are streamstones, just not the ones you want.
It's never the ones we want. Ever.
I have all the ones I don't want.
I
all
got
of
many of
them.
those.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a dual swords or a sword and board streamstone. Doesn't
But
exist.
I just got a bunch of them.
I have
Yeah,
a whole
no,
bunch
they
of
don't.
greatsword ones, which Vol wants, but I don't.
Yeah, I have a ton of great sword and great axe ones, but none of the other ones. I ain't gunlance ones. I have a ton of those.
Yeah, I am extraordinarily tempted to switch my main weapon just to bait the desire sensor into giving me something I actually need.
But it won't. It'll immediately stop.
Yeah, the
Well,
desire sensor
eventually there has to be at least one weapon which, it's got to give me something eventually. I mean,
Nah.
come on.
I think if you actually just keep swapping weapons and get good with all of them, it'll just stop dropping streamstones altogether.
That's not nice.
No,
You can't-
but it's likely.
You can't beat Lady RNG ever. She has a level of prescience that beats out everybody in the Dune universe. Like, she knows how to screw you over if she's mad at you for some reason.
And the Dune universe is powered by the magic of, Mary Sue and bad writing.
Well,
I
it's
know,
mostly
that's
power.
going to get people salty.
Yeah, Dune ain't very good, folks. Hate to break that to you. It's pretty old. It doesn't hold up very well.
No.
If you did, maybe it was probably better when it came out. Not so good nowadays. That's a rant for another time, though.
Yeah. No more political bullshit, thank you. Right, so my week has been a lot of little things. First and foremost, it's been fighting off the lurgy. Because it rained.
Now you're going to give it to us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Normally I catch it off one of you two, so it's a change. So, yeah, if I suddenly vanish, I'm probably off hawking up a lung or something. Ugh.
You got two of those.
Yeah, I got a spare. So, stuff I actually did this week is, it's a whole bunch of little things. So, let's start with a movie. A very silly, I want to call it a bad... I don't want to call it a bad movie. It is a bad movie, but it's still very enjoyable. And that is Rampage. The Dwayne Johnson one.
Title for a movie. This sounds like a movie I might have seen a poster for in the back of my head, maybe on the internet somewhere.
Oh, like
But not one I've ever
Dwayne The
watched.
Rock Johnson. Really?
Yep.
Really, Fern?
It is based on a video game from the 90s. The plot of the video game is 3 people get experimented on, turn into giant monsters, and go around town smashing stuff and eating people.
Oh, I loved Rampage.
Rampage
I
is so
played it on
good.
The PlayStation port was so good of the classic Rampage.
So they made a movie of it.
Why?
Why?
I know, that's what I said when I first saw it. So it was going to, why is this a thing? And is U-Bowl's name on this? Thankfully, no. It's Dwayne Johnson. And it's probably just more proof that Dwayne Johnson does not take himself even remotely seriously.
Is he?
I think he's
gotten
gotten better at acting the less seriously he's taken himself.
He has. He's actually rather good in this movie because he's not taking himself seriously at all.
What year did this movie come out?
Just this year. It's only a fairly new release.
Why are they making a Rampage movie in 2019?
Huh?
Does anybody other than old fags like us even remember Rampage?
I don't remember. I don't even know what you're talking about.
That is politically incorrect, sir. So
Get over it.
So the movie, it's a movie about 3 giant monsters smashing up Chicago instead of, Made 'em Upopolis or whatever it was called.
Well, no, they in Rampage you went all over the earth into every single city in the world, and you could see cool landmarks from all over the place.
Wasn't that
That was part of the
one?
fun. No, it might have been only for the PlayStation port, because that was the first one I played. I didn't play the original arcade version, but...
yeah, there was Rampage, and then I think there was Rampage World Tour.
Yeah, there were a bunch of Rampage sequels, but the port of the original for the PlayStation, you could totally fly to every single city on the planet, and they had a level for almost every city, and that was the big draw of the game. You got to see and or smash up all the landmarks of every single big city in the world.
That means that the Sydney Opera House got wrecked, doesn't it?
By a giant
Probably.
monkey, yes.
Because that's usually when it comes to Australia and you need to destroy a landmark.
That's the only part of Australia that exists.
Yeah. It's always the Sydney Opera House.
Y'all need better landmarks.
We have a giant rock. We have the world's biggest rock. We also have the world's biggest fake pineapple.
I insist on calling it Ayers Rock. I refuse to call it...
Yeah, I've only ever heard Ayers Rock, so...
Yeah, most people outside of
Because that's what it's called.
But you can't call it that anymore because that's racist.
Sorry, that's racist.
It's racist. Right.
Our insensitivity does not care about your political correctness.
Obviously not. So...
Just
the
by
movie.
the way, folks.
It's still the 3 giant monsters, the gorilla, the werewolf, well, actually, no, not a werewolf anymore, and not Godzilla, except it's really legitimately not Godzilla this time.
Oh, so Lizzie's just like...
Lizzie is actually kind of a giant crocodile Nergigante thing.
Uh-huh.
That's horrifying.
It is.
Everything involving Nergigante is horrifying.
Yeah, so Lizard, instead of being totally not Godzilla, is kind of like 4-legged crocodile Nergigante.
What was the blue furred rat looking monster's name? Like Ralph or
the
something?
werewolf.
Yeah.
He's just a wolf.
Supposed to be a werewolf?
He's supposed to be a
He
werewolf.
used to look like he looked like a rat thing.
He kind of
in
did,
there.
yeah. So he's now
The
just
original
a wolf, except he's also been spliced with porcupine and flying squirrel.
Huh.
I think I remember this now.
And wait a minute,
And
what
George.
was the George? That's right, that was his name.
Yeah, George is still just a giant gorilla, except they've just gone with the player 2 George to avoid lawsuits, so he's a white gorilla.
I see.
Now, they've kept a lot of the themes, like it's done by, experimentation and psychoserums and whatnot. Instead of 3 people being experimented on, it's mutagenic serum drops out of a space station which exploded in the sky because reasons and lands on 3 animals.
That's like the plot of the Neptunia zombie game.
What, just reasons?
It changes depending on the scene and whether Blan remembers what she said the plot was last time. But the general gist is that I think at one point it's a cruise ship crashes into the classroom and releases a virus that turns people into zombies, and later on it's a satellite that falls from the sky that releases a virus and turns people into zombies.
Huh.
Although I think she argued that no, that wasn't correct at one, but I really couldn't follow the story, to be honest.
Right.
But
So-
regardless, stuff falls from the sky and turns people into monsters.
Right, so that's more or less what happens here. Stuff falls from the skies and turns animals into monsters. Now, the company that made this serum wants serum wants their serum back, so they think, I know, let us turn on this beacon, which will send the animals into a violent frenzy and get them to come here. We're only
What
in the
could
smack
possibly
in
go
the,
wrong?
we're only in downtown Chicago.
Well,
Is-
it's not like Chicago could get any more ruined.
I know, right? Well, after Dresden's done with it, yes. Out of book reference. So
It is a book reference, but it's also a real world one, folks. Don't go to Chicago. Bad for you.
Just don't.
Well,
go to Chicago.
don't go to Chicago if you expect to be able to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
go
villains
bad for
in
you.
this, it's your standard, evil corporation. These guys would make Umbrella Corp look sane. They are so absolutely cartoonishly evil. It is glorious, actually. I didn't think it was having something like that cliche and dumb would be so much fun.
Oh, if you're working with something as basic as Rampage, I mean, there's only one direction you can really go.
Yeah.
If you try to take that serious, it's not going to work.
Yeah, like there's all sorts of things. Like there's the scientist who kind of laid the groundwork for the serum. She's hanging around with the Rock, and there's supposed to be some sort of romantic subplot there. There's a romantic subplot. They're kind of interested in each other. Yeah, well, let's never talk about that again.
I've never been able to take romantic subplots involving The Rock seriously.
Nobody can, not even the Rock.
The Rock.
I was very skeptical when he started out as an actor, but now I am so glad he did.
The first thing I think I ever saw him in was the Doom movie.
Really? Okay.
As the first Rock movie that I can remember seeing. And
Yeah.
oh boy, was he bad in that movie.
That movie was just bad in
remember-
general, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I can't remember what the first one I saw him in was, but all I remember is that he used to make a big deal about how he didn't like hurting people or something. He didn't like violence or didn't like guns because bad things happened to people if he'd pick them. It was really, really ham-fisted.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember
Emphasis
what it was
on the
though.
ham.
But this was back when he didn't realize that he was a comedy actor and was trying to play serious roles and couldn't understand why people were laughing.
Yeah. Considering he was a professional wrestler beforehand, you'd think he'd know what he's all about.
You think he'd know ham acting inside out?
Yeah. Just keep doing that. That is your career. But then you've got things like the remake of Jumanji, where he's an insecure 16-year-old girl trapped in The Rock's body. It kind of makes sense in context.
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't sound like a true thing at all. I'm sorry. I don't believe you.
It is totally a thing. That is part of the plot of that movie.
Jumanji is always weird. No matter how
Jumanji
many
was
times
very
they-
much weird.
Was it a book before it was a movie?
Yeah.
That was a movie.
Yeah.
No, I think it was an original. Back when they used to make original movies,
That's,
before
Yeah.
everything was just a reboot.
That's going back a long time. I need to make a chainsaw. Chainsaws. So yeah, it's just a very dumb, goofy, rompy movie with, crude humor and gratuitously pointless violence in a few places. That's it. That's all there is to say about that movie. It's just dumb and goofy and fun. I actually recommend people go watch it.
Oh, so why did you watch it? What brought that on?
It just on. Somebody else had queued it. Excuse me, had seen it there and queued it up. And it goes, oh, it's a giant monster movie. And I saw the title. I know what this is. So, yeah. It's just dumb fun. And it's a video game movie which has very loose ties back to the video game, but is at least enjoyable. Because the original game had next to no plot. It had an excuse plot, and that was it.
Yeah, dude, people turn into monsters and wreck cities. Make them stop wrecking cities, please.
No, you are the
Someday-
monster.
all the- Yeah, yeah, you were the monster, but they'd send like the helicopters after you and stuff, and their job was to shoot you.
Yeah, that's also happens in the movie. It's like ridiculous stunts with tanks and helicopters and things, completely and utterly ineffective.
Did they ever do enough damage to make the monster shrink back into the person?
Only when The Rock drives one. Well, actually, that's the only time they actually do any damage whatsoever.
Because it was always so funny in the games whenever you're smashing up a building and you get hit by something huge and you die, and the monster just shrinks back into the person and they're naked and they have to cover themselves with their arms.
Yeah.
And they just slink away on the screen. And that was your death scene in that game.
Yeah, very silly games. I loved them.
It was a very funny game series. I only played the first one, though.
Yeah. Alright, next little thing. The next expansion for Grim Dawn came out, which is... apparently features a rather hirsute man with a very prominent nipple. There's the game.
Um,
I have to leave it at the most awkward possible moment. It's perfect.
I'm not really sure how I should process that information that you've just given me.
Yeah, they have a thing with loading screens. So yeah, this expansion is set in the desert, so it's, you know, Gothic Titan Quest, except now it's in the desert. They have answered the fan requests though. There's been a lot of demand for a long time for a skill tree which actually focuses on using shields. Like the soldier shield tree kind of has a few, but that's about it. So now you have the Oathkeeper, which is essentially you're a paladin now. In a rather grim, gritty, depressing world. You are completely out of place. What are you even doing here? So yeah, it's fun. It's just more of the same though. So there's nothing really more to say there. What else? Caught up on some animes because I actually kind of got my tablet sorted out now. It's mostly working again. I don't know why, but it's just because, I guess, of wear and tear on the charger port, it will only accept officially licensed Samsung chargers now.
That's convenient.
What am I doing?
For someone.
For Samsung. Certainly not for me.
It was probably an update you did to the phone.
Maybe. It's been...
It's not impossible.
In fact, I almost guarantee it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's no.
Oh, but his tablet is like ancient and decrepit. They wouldn't do updates.
It's 6 years old. That's ancient by tablet standards.
But what OS is it using? Because that's what's going to get updated.
It's Android, but
yeah.
I don't know what version.
Yeah, who knows?
What am I doing? I need to figure out exactly what I'm actually supposed to be doing in this game. I know what I need to do. I need to do this. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I caught up on some anime. Just the big three at the moment that I'm watching, which is Slime Time, and their latest episode was probably the most lazy episode of anime I've ever watched, but it was still incredibly enjoyable.
It was a recap, wasn't it?
It's a complete recap.
I didn't watch it.
It was just
a recap.
Yeah, random selection of scenes, just played end to end with Ifrit and Veldora talking over it.
Yeah, it's
Anytime I see a 0.5 in an episode number, I usually don't bother to watch it.
Yeah.
Because it's very rare that there's a good one. The last good one that I saw was from Recreators, which was incredible.
Yeah.
The slime one was interesting in that it gave us Veldora's perspective on everything while he's stuck inside Rimuru.
Yep.
And how
they've never really been 100% clear on just how much awareness he has.
Apparently he can see everything. Outside.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, I mean, that's convenient now from a narrative point of view, but
exactly.
He's it's interesting because he seems to have a different. I don't know if this is conveyed in the anime, but I read the not the manga chapter. I read something. I read some official media that covered the same type of recap thing. Because people were pointing out that you should really go check it out because it gives more info on what's going on in that scene.
Okay.
And Veldora actually sees what Rimuru is doing as incredibly pragmatic and like he is the most logical person in the world, and that he's actually following through on this incredibly selfish venture to make himself super powerful by getting all these people to trust him because he doesn't understand the idea of human compassion towards people and other creatures.
That and the fact is that he's like a total tsundere for Rimuru.
He actually admits that he is a tsundere and is quite pleased with that title.
I just like the best part of the episode was him and Ifrit playing shogi together because they're stuck inside Rimuru. The running subplot of them just playing shogi.
Yeah, that's the whole subplot, and they do it better than Hunter x Hunter, by the way. Just saying.
It's not hard to do stuff better than Hunter x Hunter.
No, that anime, it ended.
Was that shots fired? I think it was. Somebody's gonna be mad.
Yeah, someone's gonna be mad, but that anime ended. That's all I can say about it. Actually, it's the end because. So yeah, it's a very lazy way of doing a filler episode. But if you just sit there and read the sub, it's just a lot of dumb fun. Just watching how less how Ifrit goes about things because he's kind of sitting around thinking what the hell is going on. It's more just Veldora there, chewing on the scenery.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fun. Shield Hero. I actually swore out loud at the end of the latest episode. Well, probably not the latest episode now. Is it White? You're going to stop it there, right when things are getting interesting.
Okay, it frustrated me so much I went and read all the manga that followed up after it. I'm not kidding. I am totally caught up on the manga.
When have you had time to do that?
Like yesterday.
To my knowledge, you've done nothing but be buried in accountancy work for the past 3 weeks.
Well, that ended on Wednesday. So I've had Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, not Wednesday. Wednesday night, and then I died, and then I slept for 18 hours. But we'll get to that later.
Yes.
But yes.
So
part of the bit of time I've spent has been reading Shield Hero.
I'm just so salty. It's like we've had all this political bickering back and forth, the dick waving contest between Naofumi and the king. Here comes Melty trying to reconcile things. Suddenly there's an assassination attempt, and the episode ends. Why?
So that you watch next week. That's the point.
Just why? I wanted to know what happened right then and there.
Well, I haven't watched it at all yet.
I need to sit down and actually watch the latest episode. It should be up now.
It is, while we're on it, so we don't tangent on it later, the manga is actually a really, really easy read. It goes by really fast if you're interested in checking the manga out, because it almost reads more like a novel than a manga. It
was a novel.
Yeah, it was a web novel.
It's an adaptation of an adaptation, so...
Yeah.
You tend to grind things down into their basic elements after that point.
Yeah. So it's a really easy read, because honestly what's on the pictures doesn't even really matter all that much when you're reading it. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to waste time.
Usually it goes like that because most light novels are pretty impenetrable to read, relatively speaking. And when they get adapted for anime, it trims off most of the fat. When they adapt the anime to a manga, usually you end up distilling everything down to its most basic elements, so they're usually very easy to digest comparatively.
Yeah, I think it's the first light novel to anime to manga adaptation that I've read. But yeah, it was a very, very quick and easy read. Like, only took tops 4 hours to chew through the 50-something volumes that are out.
Yeah, okay. Incidentally, the anime is just about caught up for Slime Time as well. And there's maybe 1 volume left. And that's dealing with this Diablo chappie. Whoever he ends up being. Something.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't spoiled Slime Time for myself.
Yeah, don't spoil Slime Time. Because Slime Time is just, still got to keep doing its thing.
Slime Time is an anime that is just fun to watch every week.
Yeah, I still haven't been able to 100% work out why I don't find it offensively Mary Sue-ish.
I think it's because the dude's just a slime and it's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it might be.
it's very innocent and fun.
I suppose it's partly because he doesn't really want very much.
He just wants to be a nice guy.
It's sort of like why the protag of One Punch Man isn't a douche.
He's not trying
annoying.
to be.
He doesn't really care. He's not that bothered about any of the stuff that's going on around him. He just wants to be left alone, more or less.
Yeah. He just wants to do his thing, and that's it.
Yeah, he's not trying to be a tryhard. Slime Time's just kind of there and just going with the flow of stuff, and stuff just kind of happens, and he rolls with it. Sometimes literally, because he's a slime. Actually, he kind of hops more, but
He kind of bounces, but yeah. So, gotta sit down and catch up on that next episode of Shield Hero. I just haven't had time yet because work.
Yeah. The good news is that I think Shield Hero is finished, so if they do decide to keep adapting it, there's an ending to the story they can work towards.
Oh, good.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm getting a bit tired of these shows that just sort of peter out because they've caught up, and then by the time they come back to thinking about making a second season, nobody's interested anymore. Like, I was absolutely astonished that Index got another season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a good span of about 3 years right before the Isekai boom where we just got a whole bunch of light novel adaptations and only the first season.
Yeah, actually, why did that happen like that?
I don't know.
Money,
Well,
probably.
I can tell you why it happened. Go buy the light novel. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not fun. But yeah,
there are several times in Cromartie High School where the narrator outright says, "If you want to know why, just read the manga."
Yeah. I've seen that in a few other parody anime where it just says, if you want to know what this is all about, go read the manga. In one case it said, go read the manga, you plebeian. I forget which one that was, though.
yeah. The web novel, by the way, for Shield Hero is completely impenetrable, and the translation is awful.
Yeah.
Thought about checking that to read that out? No. Bad times all around.
Just no.
Don't do that. Just don't do that. Mm-mm.
That is bad choice.
That is bad news bears for everybody involved. Don't do that.
Alright. And then finally, Black Clover is the other one I've been keeping on because it's just dumb shonen-ness. It seems to be on some sort of really weird tournament arc at the moment.
Yeah, but it just seems like the first round is disposing of all the nameless chumps that don't have anything of interest to say.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, also, we may actually have to come up with a new Monster of the Week title for Black Clover. Narcissist of the Week. Because that universe is no shortage of narcissists. It's actually getting kind of annoying. Everyone thinks they're so good because they're royalty. Yeah. And then Asta comes along and hits them in the face with a giant sword.
it's funny how nobody seems to learn that, right? It's sort of like, it seems to be something that happens to a lot of the underdog shonen protagonists like Naruto and so forth, where it always seems to be the case that everybody will look down on the hero after, they've felled 3 gods, 2 demigods, and like 15 outer abominations, and everybody still thinks that they're a scrub.
Yeah.
It's just that nobody ever learns, ever.
Yeah, so what's Asta done at this point? He's more or less just taken out the big hitters out of the evil cult. He's earned the recognition of the Wizard King. He's beaten the ever-loving Tar out of the opposing nations heavy hitters, as well as the Queen Witch. Yeah. He's kind of done some stuff now. But it wouldn't be a shonen if that sort of nonsense didn't keep happening.
Yeah, it's biggest hurdle getting into that show is still the pro tag.
Asta!
Yeah.
Top volume.
Captain Caps Lock is the biggest reason I haven't started that show and tried it out at all.
He kind of quietens down a little bit. Either that, or maybe I just can't hear the upper ranges of his screaming anymore.
Yeah. I can't trust people that have made it very far into the show when they say that, because they might have just adjusted to it.
There is a good amount of that. You do kind of get used to it. But, yeah, it's doing a thing at the moment. I'm not exactly sure what it thinks it's doing, but yeah. It's Tournament Arc.
You gotta have one. You can't
Gotta
not
have a
have
Tournament
one.
Arc. I was waiting until wondering when they'd get around to a Tournament Arc. Also, I've got to say it, but the partner character that they've got, that obviously evil guy with the weird mask, why is he there?
I don't know. He smells like filler extra, to be honest. I don't think that this is a filler arc, but he still smells like filler extra.
He does a bit, doesn't he? But it's like, this guy is quite obviously not supposed to be here. So why does he continue to be here? Lazy writing, perhaps?
Why not?
I'm just going to say lazy writing. Boy. Anything else? No, that's about it for my week. It's just, yeah, a whole bunch of little things. Oh, and Monster Hunter, which has basically been beating up on Tempered Kushala Daora and not getting my stream stones.
I've been deeply frustrated by similar phenomena.
Yes.
And Kushala is not my friend at all.
Kushala can just,
my goodness,
randomly, for no apparent reason, decide, no, I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I just had too many annoying situations where, like, Kushala will put up its windshield and then just sit on my face.
Yeah.
And it's not doing anything, but I can't do anything either. Very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's not a great fight. I think Kushala's a really cool monster. Like, just looks cool in general.
Shiny.
Yeah. But, ultimately it's a fight which I feel like the boss is just playing keep away the entire time. And yeah. I really don't. It's different to what I meant when I said the same thing about Leshen, because Leshen I felt like it was just preventing you from getting to it. With Kushala, like, actively just flies away and taunts you the entire time. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. It's very frustrating. But yeah, I've gotten a few Tempered Kushala kills under my belt this weekend, but it's not enough, evidently, because I don't have any stream stones.
Yeah, I'm starting to be convinced that the stream stones we actually want do not exist in our games.
Yeah.
I want Gunland stream stones. They don't exist.
I have everything but Greatsword, Longsword ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that it's not just that, oh, you need one. I need two minimum to do anything. Yeah. And they have to be the silver kind. The gold kind, no.
Yeah, the gold kind don't work.
Yeah. I presume you use gold ones when you need to do higher. You add additional augments when you've already got some applied, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had the luxury of finding out.
Nope, you're not coughing up them stones.
But yeah, I've played a bit of a Monster Hunter this week myself, but no luck.
Yeah.
I've killed a bunch. Tempered Valhazaks and Teostras and Lunastras. I actually fought Tempered Lunastra because I needed to do something to get some stream stones, but
yeah, aside from her hitting a lot harder, she's more or less the same until her final phase.
The problem is that her being more or less the same is still not helpful, because she can just fill the room with fire and it's terrible forever.
Yeah, unlike the way Kushala decides suddenly not to play anymore, she does it with fire.
Yeah. But, yeah, I find Teostra much easier than Kushala. Sure, Teostra can one-shot you, but, I mean, at least you can see it coming.
Yeah.
Like, when Lunastra does her equivalent ability, it's all about giving you just enough time to anticipate how much it's going to hurt.
Yeah, that's about all you get.
because it's like they burn you down slowly and then they chunk you, and it just seems like if you start within range, you're not going to outrun. End of story. And that the whole knockback thing is also a pain. Now, this is something I learned about Kushala, actually, that Kushala's wind shield that it puts up around itself is not wind pressure, it's knockback.
Mm.
So you can't use anti-wind pressure stuff on it at all. You've got to use anti-knockback stuff.
Blah.
I didn't know, but I don't have that many level 3 slots available anyway. Nobody does.
Nobody does.
But, yeah. It's still entertaining. It was a big distraction from me playing other games because I keep thinking about, but any moment now I'm going to get the Streamstone that I'm after, and I'll be able to upgrade my greatsword at last.
No.
This is exactly why I keep saying no, I'm not going to play right now, because I don't want to get stuck in that loop right now.
So much
I'm deeply, deeply frustrated by it.
Yes.
I hope it will eventually be over. Eventually I will get it. I hope.
Eventually.
I hope. But, yeah. So, did Fern finish his week?
One minor thing, which is probably something you're going to be talking about anyway. I stuck my face into the Nobunaga event.
Yeah.
What exactly is this madness?
A logical continuation of the previous one that you didn't have a tablet for.
I think the word logical enters this at no point. Ever.
Well, I mean logical in the sense that it's continuing an increase in absurdity on roughly the same gradient.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Except that, the elevation is a lot higher now.
So, yeah, mini Nobus everywhere. I don't know
and
where they
tank
what they're doing
Nobus,
here.
and
I don't know
robot
where they came
Nobus,
from.
and UFO Nobus.
Why? I'm so confused.
You're not supposed to understand.
I don't think anyone is. I don't think it's
You're
actually
supposed to farm
possible.
Nobus.
You just farm Nobus and don't question it. Because that way,
I'm pretty sure that the main character at one point actually comments on the absurdity of the entire situation.
Yeah.
At one point, one of your interjection options is, "Well, this isn't getting any less absurd."
Yeah, I definitely hit that one, and it got ignored.
Like most of the things you say in that game.
Anytime you try to play the deadpan snarker, you tend to get ignored.
Well, yeah, because I'm pretty sure that sarcasm is something that nobody in universe can interpret.
It just does not impact at all.
Yeah, it's just they're completely oblivious to it. Everybody is taking everything 100% seriously at all time, even if they're doing something completely silly.
Yeah, like I was just playing through it, and here's Medusa. Suddenly, she's running a bakery, and now she's gone.
But thrilled to have successfully executed her one line.
She was incredibly pleased with herself about that one line, but one line was all it was, and now she's gone. And nobody commented.
That's the thing about FGO Medusa is very much the way Medusa is described as being in her past, and that she's just horribly insecure all the time.
Yeah.
Considering what a pair of lunatics her sisters are, I guess I can't blame her.
Both in FGO and in mythology.
Hmm.
Yes, she's got some issues.
Poor girl. Yeah, you really can't help but feel for her.
Yeah. Even when she's tearing past at 100 miles an hour, all you can think is, what?
She can ride a granny bike really fast.
She can.
That riding skill, yo.
that EX level riding skill.
I don't think it's EX. I think it's a lot lower than that. Oh, it might be EX, but it gets raised to EX by Bellerophon, but I don't know that it's naturally EX.
I might have to look this up now. No, this is a tangent. Anyway, carry on with your week, sir.
Right. So yeah, I played some Monster Hunter. I played some FGO. FGO is silly. This is very, very silly.
Very,
but I'm getting
very silly.
I'm getting. She's A+ writing skill.
Okay.
I'm getting very good mileage out of Mysterious Hero and X Alta, which, you know, I went into a lot of effort rolling for her, but I don't really have the tools to make her especially useful right now. But she's got a humongous attack buff and is a berserker, so it's basically, you know, it seems inappropriate to refer to as, you know, a one size fits all Swiss Army knife when she's more sort of like, you know, a great sword. But
yeah.
She's been very.
Ozymandias has been my hero, and for once he's not standing out as the most ridiculous thing on the battlefield. You know, orbital laser pharaoh.
Yeah, there's not really much that can outmatch the UFO Nobus for being silly.
Yeah,
that their weird little modulated voice, so that you can tell that they're aliens, as well as being Nobus.
I didn't have the sound on when I fought them.
Turn it on. It's completely absurd.
But yeah, I'm not really sure exactly how I'm going to farm this many points up, but I'm going to have to find time to do it. But yeah, for better or for worse, Cha-Cha's a pretty bad welfare, so if you don't have time to get Cha-Cha, it's not as bad as missing out on things like Shiki and things like Kintoki.
I missed out on Nobu. All of my rage.
Is Cha-Cha tied to event points or to the shop?
She's tied to both. She's tied to you buy her from the shop, but you buy her using things that you get from the points. Like one of them, I think you unlock her by completing the story, but the extra copies are gotten from Shinsengumi, and the Ascension mats are gotten from the Oda team. So if you want to max her out, you've got to do both lines. But yeah, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. I think the Oda one landslide won the first one. Shinsengumi is very marginally holding out the second one. I think that's probably because pages drop, and everybody needs pages. But Nobu's way more popular, so there's still lots of people on Team Nobu.
Yeah.
So there's a tiny marginal advantage for Shinsengumi at the moment. I've been farming Shinsengumi this round. Oh, Decisive Battle is up.
Yeah, I've been hitting Shinsengumi this round. Nobu won the last round though.
Yeah, I haven't had time to really grind it though, so I don't have very many points accrued. It's been frustrating, but can't have everything, I guess. I've been relatively lucky again with CE drops. I got a CE drop in like my second match or something like that. A second mission, and that meant that I had access to the event point increasing CE long before anybody else on my friends list did, and so I put it on my Nobu and slapped Nobu up there, and every time I had like several hundred friend points every time I started the game up because I was the only one who had the points enhancement CE.
Yeah, some of those
isn't it great?
Some of those were me. It would be great, except friend points kind of drop off in usefulness after a while.
Yeah, they're pretty much just for raising CE levels, pretty much.
Unless you're trying to farm for the Angry Mango.
And get foos from it.
Yeah.
I guess you can get foos from it if you really want to. Foos have become almost an annoyance to me because they clutter up my inventory, and I'm always so hesitant to use them. Because, well, they're foos. You don't get that many of them, but then I let them sit around, so...
I made a priority list to just follow the priority list. And spend them immediately for every single class as soon as I get them.
Yeah, so it's been an incredibly silly event so far. It's going to continue to be silly, and honestly, most of the events just get sillier from here. It's pretty rare that they have a legit serious event. They do once in a while, but mostly they're just incredibly silly. And the Guda Guda series are supposed to be more or less the crown jewel of stupidity amongst the storylines.
Yeah, so far it's been living up to that mantle.
So they all come from the ridiculous Koha Ace comics. So That's where the characters originally derive from, why they act in absurd fashion so all the times, because they originally come from a gag comic. So yeah, that's that. So I played after the show. I played some more of Extella Link, and I eventually finished Extella Link. Went through all the story routes and so forth within a couple of days. So generally speaking, the technical competence of the game holds out. It does, as you level up, it does seem to become more and more true that it is optimal to get very spammy with your active skills, and you do your regular attacks less and less. I think that could do with a bit of balancing work, to be honest, because they should be good but not used as frequently as they are. Like my main, I used Jeanne as my main the way I do in the original Extella, and she is almost able to just keep rotating her skills because they have short enough cooltime and cooldowns. If you just use a set of skills that have, short cooldowns, and then you can pretty much just AoE clear around yourself constantly, and it becomes a little bit too powerful, I suppose. Like, I mean, that's not really the case as you go up in difficulty levels and things end up being much more sturdy, but I do feel like it ends up being too optimal to hammer your skills over and over again and to buff those to the detriment of other things. Like, normal attacks just sort of drop off in importance, and they're more about creating openings for big skills than they are for actually fighting with, because the damage just doesn't scale well enough. But overall, though, I think that its technical competence has really held out. There are a big mountain of extra missions that I haven't really touched yet, that some of them appear while you're clearing the story and others appear at the end of the story, and they have a range of different objectives, from serious to hard mode versions of the story missions to just ridiculous side stories that you can do. But speaking of which, the story is crap. Like, that's what it boils down to. It's really, really weak writing, and I think that the reason is that the story, when I thought about it afterwards, it feels like a side story. And I think that that's because they introduce the character of Charlie, and the story is about Charlie, and then it's just sort of his side story of what's going on. Like, it doesn't have anything like the sort of emotional heft that Extella did. Like, Extella was technically incompetent to the point where you were bearing with the gameplay so you could see the story. Mm-hmm. And the reverse is true of Extella Link, more or less, and that the story is just not very good. I could stand the story being what it is if they explained away some of the issues, but there is just too much that isn't really talked about, and you've got to go and trawl through the glossary for a lot of things and whatnot. It almost feels like they de-Nessiversized the story to try and get broader appeal or something, because it doesn't have the sort of intricacy of plot or the massive exposition dumps that I've come to expect. The way, entire world concepts got explained in depth by the Extella storyline, and this one is just like, go hit the bad guy is pretty much the depth of the story. And there's lots of things that introduced that would have provoked a exposition dump in Extella that are just sort of like glossed over in Extella Link. Like, in starting from story route 2, the bad guy uses something called the monolith to speed up the oracleization of the moon cell, but at no point do they ever give a thorough explanation of oracleization, or where the bad guy obtained the technology, or what the monolith is, or why it's there, what its connection to Velba is, and all of that stuff. There's lots and lots and lots of stuff that is just brushed aside, not explained. Doesn't matter. Don't need to worry about that. Maybe it's all in entries in the glossary, but I shouldn't have to go and read the glossary to get the story. There's lots of stuff like that. Generally speaking, the writing has taken a back seat to the gameplay competence. So honestly, what I'm waiting for is a real sequel which combines the best of both worlds, a proper Nessiverse story instead of a perfunctory scenario, and the much improved mechanics of Extella Link, because story is just not worth the price of admission. Having fun with your favorite servants is, because it's a delight to play and it's really flashy, but the storyline is just a disappointment. Like it has a start, a middle, and an end, and it does in a sufficient fashion what it sets out to do, but it's just not very ambitious. It's a story about a guy who arrives at the beginning and leaves at the end, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So not much changes, not much is different. It's not a story which involves sort of like a lot of character growth the way all of the stories in Extella Original do. Extella Link, there's no character development whatsoever for any character at any point. Not really. It's just it's almost like a vignette of Type Moon lore that establishes what the Type Moon universe version of Charlemagne was like.
Hammy.
And what his role in the greater storyline is, what his involvement with Sepha is, what his involvement with Velba is, why he did the things he did in life, Type Moon edition, and what his driving motivations were. So there's a lot of sort of there's a lot of sort of material for backstory, but it's very sterile and not very emotionally engaged with anything.
Blah.
Whereas the stories in Extella, while they were contaminated quite heavily by the gushing fanboying over Nero, all of the stuff that didn't focus on Nero was superlative. The stuff that focused on Nero was toxic because it was just gushing all the time, much like Septim was in FGO. But all the stuff that was about Tamamo and the stuff that was about Altera, even though Tamamo was made to look really bad, it still had character development for her because she had to face a unique fear that nobody else on the Moon Cell did, really. And because Tamamo was the sun, because she's a fragment of Amaterasu, she was the sun, so she was there to see what happened last time Velba fought. So she was permanently traumatized by that, and it basically sends her off the deep end when she realizes that Velba's approaching again, that Sepha's coming back, and so on. But and it's very much a story about Ultra as well, what her past is, how she develops into being her own person as opposed to just a machine, basically. And the involvement of Liz in the story is also extremely entertaining because Liz is basically just a walking disaster for anybody who tries to use her to their advantage, because she is very easily duped, but you don't want her on your side because she's more dangerous when she's on your side than when she's going against you. Because she's largely ineffectual at everything she does, and that hatching. So I find the whole role of Liz to be very amusing in Extella, because she's just absolute poison to whichever side she joins a lot of the time.
That she is.
That shows up when you meet Archimedes and Extella Link is like he has some inkling of what went on elsewhere, although he's not the same Archimedes that was encountered in Extella, but his absolute detestation and hatred for Liz just oozes out of everything that he says.
Incidentally,
I've seen
pointed out that there was some rather gaping plot holes in the writing. Did they ever get solved?
They're gaping plot holes, and most of them they're not solved, but they are left ambiguous enough that you could come up with a fan-wank explanation for them, or alternatively that they are just things that are just left unsaid as opposed to unresolved. Like, they don't explain why, but it's not impossible, sort of thing. Like, most of the things that, like, when I look back in retrospect, a lot of the things that felt like plot holes were just, they could have been really bad translation or bad writing, which don't communicate properly the intent. Like, for instance, when the main character explicitly talks about having never met Archimedes before, that's technically true because the Archimedes that he met was written out of existence, and when the timeline got reestablished properly after the quantum time lock, the Archimedes that existed then was not the same person.
Mhm.
So technically speaking, he has never met Archimedes, the administrator of the moon cell, because the one he had met in the past was Archimedes, the complete douchebag who was only waiting to be undone by his attempt to use Elizabeth. So, yeah, to be fair, I mean, Elizabeth may have had evil intent during the back half of Extella, but she was really the heroine that saved everything in the end.
Through her sheer incompetence.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she spent so much time being vain and gloaty and incompetent, she ended up creating a path to victory for the protagonist. But yeah, the last person that you want on your team is Elizabeth if you're a bad guy. It's just not going to work for you. Because she will try and help, and it will be terrible. But yeah, so game was a huge success on mechanical grounds, a real evolution from the original, and a huge disappointment on story grounds. Now let's see another one where they combine the best of both worlds, because this feels like just a side story. It doesn't feel like a real story. It doesn't feel Type Moon at all. It feels like somebody has done something using Type Moon properties.
Yeah.
The fact that the only thing that feels Type Moon about this story is the fact that, like, you know, there are two versions of Charlemagne that are split in two, and they are both on a mission from an alien world conquest device and stuff like that. Like, that's all very Type Moon, but they don't go anywhere with it. It doesn't have deeper implications. It's just something that happened. So yeah, there's a disappointment on that note. Else. Okay, so in anime, I haven't had very much time to watch anime. I've gotten a bit behind on several series, although I'm not watching most series because they're good. I'm watching them out of habit.
Yes, there's a lot of that happening.
But I did finish the Persona 5 anime.
Oh yes.
Because the last double episode came out, which covers the end of the story. And it was pretty much the same as the rest of the series in that it's sufficient. It's sufficient. It's not... It doesn't have the streak of unnatural genius that the Persona 4 animation had at times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not Devil Survivor 2 the anime either. It's
adequate.
It's adequate.
It's
like you can watch it and you do get the gist of the main story, and it's nice to look at a lot of the time. It hits all the major story beats. There are some holes in the process, but they're not bigger than the holes you would get if you did a really insufficient playthrough of Persona 5. Like, I never did, so I don't really know. Like, I did a really sloppy playthrough of Persona 3 the first time I played it, because it was years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything about Persona back then, and I just sort of rocked my way through it in a fairly random fashion. But when I did my first playthrough of Persona 5, I managed to complete all the social links, I think. So I had a relatively full playthrough, although I have my problems with the way the story is presented there as well. But because there's not time to cover tons of social link crap in the anime, the whole, oh, well, the people you befriended during the year basically sort of come to your rescue at the end shtick sort of falls a bit flat.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know that the main character knows these people, but the most you ever see of them are sort of brief montage shots. So, yeah, it was a bit flat. What else? Right, I went to see the second Heaven's Feel movie on Friday, because they released another bunch of cinemas that were going to show it. So when I suddenly saw that it was on, I rushed out to catch the late viewing on Friday. So I got home after midnight. Ugh. But so I'd never actually gone to the cinema in the city before. It's a relatively new one. And I wondered when I booked the tickets why there were only 6 rows in the cinema. And it's because that every chair is a recliner.
Oh, yes.
Is a big squishy plush recliner. So yeah, you sit in one of those things and your biggest enemy is sleep because it's so comfortable. But yeah, so The movie was very, very good. It was very, very good. I thought the first one was good, but I had some misgivings about it because the pacing is incredibly lethargic early on. And I think that the reason for that is that the first movie is paced very badly for a movie, but it's paced very well for the first third of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were the sort of person who could sit down and watch a 6-hour long movie, the pacing would be about on scale for a 6-hour long movie. It's just not on scale for a 2-hour long movie, which it actually is. So in the case of this one, you're at the sort of like the building speed to the climax portion of the story. So everything is just mile a minute awesomeness.
Nice.
What does the movie cover specifically from plot point to plot point?
It covers everything from first part, the aftermath of the fight at Ryodoji Temple, where Lancer goes down and Saber goes down.
Okay.
And Shiro has to be bailed out by Medusa to stop getting killed by Zoken. And it covers everything from there up to where Sakura kills her brother and basically the madness descends. And has basically, it's got her now.
Okay.
She knows that she's the Shadow and exactly what's going on.
That's where the Heavensfield universe splits off, is it? With Sakura going
No,
banana nuts?
the Heavensfield universe actually splits off in the first 5 minutes, sort of thing. The big split for Heavensfield is actually Shiro refusing to form a coalition with Tosaka at the outset because he doesn't really feel like there's a good reason for him to basically play the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he decides that basically it's more important that he makes sure that Sakura's taken care of and so on and so forth, and run off and have some silly war because the stakes don't really seem like they are high enough to get versed into Margus land at that point. But
yeah. So how did that work out for you, Hero?
Yeah, things not good. Things not good. Not good at all.
It was a bad time for him, but in the end, he got there, maybe.
Sort of.
Depending on the ending and the interpretation of what happened.
So this middle movie, given the slice of time that it covers, is basically an angry humiliation conga for Seaweed. Like, it's just... it does not go well for him at all, and it could have happened to a nicer guy.
So the elephant in the room with this span of time is the erotic black hole that is very prevalent in the VN in this point.
I was quite impressed because all of the sex scenes take place, but they're all sort of done extremely tastefully, and that it's always sort of like they don't dwell on it any longer than they need to, and it's slightly out of camera shot, so you know exactly what they're doing and why, but it's not for titillation because you can't see anything.
Okay, good.
They cover it as well as it could possibly be done, in my opinion.
Okay.
The most hot and heavy stuff that you see on screen, for the most part, is actually when they haven't crossed that bridge yet, and Sakura really is not being honest about exactly what it is that she's after, and she drinks Shiro's blood at one point because she claims, I just need some magic to offset the loss that I've suffered from taking control of Ryder again. And so she drinks this blood and does it in a way too suggestive fashion.
That's not at all creepy.
But that's the absolute limit of what you see really fully on camera in that sense. So they've dealt with that as well as it can be done. I don't think that there's any improvement. This is way better than CG Dragon and CG Dolphins. That's exactly where it should be.
Yeah,
this is the way it should have been done. This is the way it always should have been done.
Given the time frame of the story, it had to be asked and pointed out.
Yeah.
It's
So they basically have. I hesitate to call it a sex scene because that's clearly what's going on in the scene, but the camera's not pointed at it, so to speak, for most of the time. But they do one of them sort of in full. As you know, there are lots of them in the storyline. in the story, that particular period of time. But
At least 4 or 5, I think.
But instead of going back to that well all the time, the way you would if it was Game of Thrones or whatever, they just show that Sakura's in bed with Shiro in sort of like various shots at night sort of thing, so that you know that it's an ongoing thing, but they don't ever go back to focus on it. It's just, oh well, they're in a sexual relationship now.
Yeah. Ain't got time for that if you want to cover the whole Heaven's Feel story. That's good.
No. That is the only real criticism I have, is that sometimes it feels like the ground is getting out from under you. It's that feeling of running too fast but your legs can't keep up sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do have to keep up a brisk pace. There's a lot of content. And the biggest casualty is Ilya.
Aww.
There's a lot of scenes that Ilya is present and says nothing, because she would have had a lot of dialogue in the original, but there's no time for the story to be about Ilya. Because the thing is, Heaven's Feel is a compression of the Ilya route and the Sakura route into one route, where they decided to make Sakura the heroine. And so
they cut down on Murder Lolly.
They basically removed her entirely, almost. Like,
Wow.
there's two real scenes where Ilya and Shiro interact at length, and they're important scenes, but they almost feel out of place. People have referred to Heaven's Feel as the story where Shiro romances Ilya and sleeps with Sakura, because that's the way it comes off a lot of the time in the visual novel. And honestly, in one sense, this movie actually does it better, because they cut out the Ilya. Therefore, the romance with Sakura seems like the focus of that particular plot thread, as opposed to splitting its attention the way it does in the visual novel. But as a result, Ilya's involvement is very peripheral. She just happens, she's like, oh, well, and now she lives at Shiro's house and eats their food. That's pretty much how it goes thus far. They're going to have to wake up from that, because like the bring Ilya back scene is a lot of people's favorite from Heaven's Feel, where Shiro decides that, well, Ilya's important as well, I'm going to rush off and save her, sort of thing. Like, that's happening in the third movie, so they'll have to bring Ilya back into focus a bit, and if they do for only a short amount of time and then put her in the background again, it's going to end up coming off kind of weird.
Yeah.
But
Does Ilya have
the-
Berserker
so that-
in the Heaven's Field route?
say again?
Does Ilya have Berserker in the Heaven's Field route?
Yeah, and that brings me to the next bit. The fight scene, there are lots of fight scenes, because it's sort of like the exhilarating portion of the story, but the fight scene of Saber Alta versus Heracles is a spectacle and a half. It's incredible. It's everything that fight needed to be, and that just isn't properly communicated at any point in any of the routes in the visual novel. The entire thing is just a spectacle. It's incredible. And largely because most of the time Hercules jobs. Like in most presentations of the story, Hercules jobs entirely. He just dies. Even though he's supposed to be super, super powerful, he never shows off. This rectifies that whole syndrome, because they actually use God Hand.
Oh.
But he has to Saber. They managed to show just how powerful Artoria actually is, and just how powerful Heracles actually is. Like, the reason why Saber Alta wins is because she's powered by the Black Grail. Without the Black Grail, she wouldn't be able to keep raising the stakes the way she does, because she has to carve through life after life after life after life of Heracles. And this is the best showing that Heracles has gotten to give since in Prisma Ilia, where he also takes multiple lethal blows to bring down. But in Prisma Ilia, he's also fighting two elementary school girls, which sort of takes away from the seriousness of it. But this fight scene is just, it's spectacular. The volume was slightly too loud in the cinema as well, which actually even made it better.
Nice.
It was painful in scenes where there were only music, but in this fight was just, it was magnificent. You have to see it. I can't even really describe it, but it's just the scope and the dynamism of it, the animation, every part of it is incredible. It's just there's nothing in any other Fate animation is worthy of comparison. Even the very best, they pale in comparison to the. It's just they clearly just went all out, pulled out all the stops. It's just an incredible fight. You get to see the two of the most powerful servants on record getting to just go head to head with each other. It's a little bit skirts the edge of canon in some ways, because the sheer number of times that Excalibur Morgan gets used to hit Hercules, in theory, should make the rating of Excalibur Morgan fall below the threshold that is able to actually penetrate Heracles' skin, but you could excuse that simply by the fact that the Black Grail is blatantly upping her supply of power constantly, so that she can just hit harder and harder and harder every time. But it's an incredible fight scene. Absolutely incredible. The other thing that's worthy of note, I think, is that the other thing they've done really well, which is an expansion on the visual novel in presentation, not in story, is when the shadow starts to really run amok around the city, they do a really good job of presenting it not as sort of like slasher action, but as horror.
Oh.
Like it's horror. Like you see sort of like random flashes of the shadow cutting into scenes and that sort of thing, and then everything around it just dying horribly or just disappearing and that sort of thing. Like they do a really good presentation of just what it is that the shadow is doing to the city while nobody knows what's going on. So yeah, it was just a really, really good movie, and I just hope that, number one, I hope that the third one can follow through, and number two, I hope the third one gets made at all, and that UFO Table haven't actually been tax evading and are going to get destroyed by it.
Yeah,
so,
that would be rather unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
they're the best company for just pure animation quality.
Yeah.
Right now in the biz.
You can basically see them at their best in this movie. Like even like stuff which is not animation, like background drawings. Like I had to do a double take in some of the early scenes in the temple to remind myself that it was painting, it wasn't photographs, because it's so detailed. But yeah, so I can, if you're a fan of Fate Stay Night, I can heartily recommend that movie. Really, really good. I just hope that the whole thing comes together well.
All right, it might be break time.
It is definitely break time. So let's go to a break, and we'll be back after some Muzak.
All right, let us do that as soon as it gives me my cursor back. Stupid game. There we go. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes.
And we're back.
Yes, indeedy.
So, we were at the end of Vaults Week, I think. Did you have anything else?
Not really. The major trailer for Absolute Demonic Front Babylonia is out. Going to be in October series. Looking forward to that. And the successor to Carnival Phantasm has been announced as well, which is an Iliaverse one.
What is this madness?
Prisma Phantasm. It's the Iliaverse successor to Carnival Phantasm.
Oh my. The madness continues.
I don't know what the ETA on that one is. Also, the character designer got announced for the Camelot movie, and it's a relatively well-known one who's done a lot of very well-liked art of those characters, so most people are pretty happy with it.
Cool.
And glad that it's not just being left in the hands of just the same old crew again who draw the same old faces on everybody. But
same face.
Oh, that's Takeuchi, but he's never mind. That's a long discussion if we get into animators and character artists. So yeah, so I guess we can transition into what I've been doing. I think Paul's done. I don't think you ever said you were done. Okay, yeah. Okay. So, what have I been doing this week? Well, as Paul can tell you from several angry messages I sent him about it while I was working on it this week, until about Wednesday afternoon, it was accounting garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally ended Wednesday afternoon, or so I thought. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because then Thursday, or was it Friday? I think it was actually Friday. I got in there, and there was still more to do that just hadn't been given to me or wasn't accounted for. And this was largely due to the sheer incompetence of the last accountant we had listing a loan the company had taken out as profit.
Oh my.
And treating that like that's just money we had in the bank.
That's a little bit illegal, isn't it?
It's only on our personal books, and it hadn't been sent out to taxes yet. If we'd send it out to taxes, yeah, that'd be illegal.
Yeah.
That'd be an accounting error that really, really bad. that would be audit worthy, to say the least.
Yes, it would.
And your nightmare would continue.
Yes. So I had to fix that, and so all Friday I was chewing through that, and then finally at the end of Friday I finished that, and I think I told every single green dot I saw on Discord that it was finally over, and I was super happy.
Yay.
But on Thursday, after work on Thursday, I died for like 18.5 hours. So, yeah, I had to pull mini all-nighters to get that thing done. It was a mess. So I didn't get to... So my Sekiro play was intermittent, we'll say. It would be like an hour or two before bed, if that, before one of the beds, because I don't sleep like normal people, before I would go rest for a couple hours. And that would be all I would play for the day. But while I was accounting, I do have a revisited piece of media I'll bring up again, just because of how my opinion on it keeps changing the more times I think about it and the more times I watch it or listen to it. And that's, I had Danganronpa V3's trials on in the background while I was doing this because I just needed something to talk to me to keep me awake at that point, and I couldn't think of something I actually wanted to listen to or watch while I was doing it. So I turned on Dupaloopa V3 again. And when I first finished that story, I was not a fan. I thought it was worse than the series, 0 out of 10. Terrible, why you do this, Kodaka? And the more I think about it, the faster it's rising to best in the series. It's a very weird thing. And this seems to be the case with absolutely everybody that is a Dupaloopa fan that finishes the game.
Are you sure that you just hadn't slept in 5 days and therefore were going crazy?
No, this has been a legitimate thing the more I think about it in general. And it just makes a better story the more time it has to sit with you, because you realize what Kodaka was trying to do with it. it's a very he does meta endings on purpose because they're ridiculous and over the top with a lot of last minute reveals and stuff. It's just the way that Kodaka writes, and you wouldn't play Danganronpa if you didn't like that anyway. But V3 is exceptionally meta to a degree that is absolutely absurd, which is in character for Kodaka. He had to one up himself.
Yes.
So, but it just comes off as time wasty, I guess, because of a lot of the stuff you thought was true gets revealed as red herrings. But the more you think about it, especially if you're listening to only the voice scenes from the beginning, you realize that it was actually foreshadowed really, really well, just very, 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 very subtly underneath the layer of red herrings. And that fits under the whole theme of the game being truth and lies. And finding the truth within the lies.
The game itself is a lie.
Yeah, the game itself is a lie. But yeah, it just if you have not played V3 yet, or you've been on the fence about it, or you didn't like it the first time, I encourage a replay or rewatch of it if it's still not sitting quite right with you, because it just seems to sit better and better the more I think about it. It's very weird. Oops. But yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because it was something I noticed going through media this week, and since I don't have a whole lot of media to talk about other than Sekiro, since I have not had time to do much else. But yeah, that was on in the background. The other thing I did, I mentioned briefly, I blitzed through the Shield Hero manga, which was a really, really fast read. Took 4 hours tops. Like, I wasn't even trying to go fast, and I just completely blew through it. It is surprising how fast it goes if you start from the point the anime ends up into where it's at. Like, it time flies. It's like 60-something chapters in, but you start at like chapter 20-something. If you've been following the anime. And the chapters going up to wherever it's at in the story are just really, really fast. And without spoiling anything, there is a significant catharsis factor in the story that does eventually come and happen.
I was hoping there would be, because they're just building and building and building, and something is going to break.
It pays off in perhaps the most glorious way possible.
Marvelous.
So it is not for naught.
Yeah, and I believe you mentioned the the manga has actually ended?
The web novel's ended. We have a definitive ending to the story.
Okay.
The manga is following the anime's outline for what they're going to do, and the light novel, and they're following the light novel adaptations, which I thought about ordering until I read the first few chapters in a PDF in like 20 minutes, and that was the worst official localization I think I've ever read.
Oh my!
It was awful.
Quite a claim.
It was terrible. I couldn't tell who was speaking half the time.
Ew.
It was that bad. So yeah, avoid the light novels at all costs. They are horrible. Just the writing quality is bad. You can't tell who's talking. So yeah, drop that like a sack of bricks in less than 30 minutes and just read the manga instead. But yeah, Shield Hero is not something I want to spoil for anybody, any parts of it, because it does rely on the big reveals and the emotional impact each one has a lot. That's a big part of the story and how it's structured. So
yeah,
I don't want to spoil much about Shield Hero at all. But it is worth it. It does pay off everything it builds up to. Let's see. And I guess this is the part where we talk about Sekiro.
Yes, it is.
So this is the part y'all are actually interested in. How do I even start this? Okay, so we'll go through my personal journey of Sekiro, and then we'll talk about what people have been saying about Sekiro and laugh at them. Let's do that.
Why they are wrong.
Yeah. So I had parked it right before the first two bosses. I had cleared all the trash up to them, thoroughly explored the areas, and that's all I really had time for. I didn't have time to learn any bosses last week because I was smack in the middle of that accounting garbage. One of the nights last week while I was doing the accounting garbage, I did take the time to beat those two bosses. And one of them kicked my butt for at least 2.5 hours before she finally went down. Like, these bosses are not playing around at all, is the baseline thing here. They are perfectly beatable. There's nothing they do that is inherently cheap so far that I found is just, oh, that's garbage, other than one system mechanic that I'm not a fan of, but it's still not that bad. With the third boss?
There's something I've heard from people who are sort of thoughtful about the game is that they die tons and tons, but they don't feel rage.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's like, I know what I should have done. I just didn't push the right button at the right time. Or I dodged that attack wrong. Or I dodged when I should have jumped. Or I tried to deflect an undeflectable attack. Stuff like that. And the game's very clear about what attacks are going to hit you with the bosses. It's very clear what you did wrong every single time you die. It is much, much better than the Souls games about that. Mostly because there aren't nearly as many big stompy monster bosses. Most of them are humanoids with varying weapon types and fighting styles. So you don't wonder what limb of the monster clipped you and did the damage that killed you, like you do with a lot of the other Souls games. In Sekiro, you very clearly know what attack pattern hit you and killed you, and that you did something wrong in defending yourself against it. And you need to amend that next time. The hardest boss... Fair. Yeah. The hardest boss that took me 2 full nights to beat, of 2 hours each, was Genichiro, who is the dude that cuts off your arm at the start of the game. You fight him as the 3rd boss in the game. Like, he's the 2nd mandatory boss, 3rd boss if you count the 1 optional boss that you can do in the interim. That dude exists to say, okay, have you figured out how to play this game yet? Do you understand what you're supposed to be doing? Because if you can't deflect every single one of his attacks, he's going to murder you. And the dude has three health bars and 2 phases that are really, and the last one is really, really intense and tough. It's not really as, the first 2 are a big endurance fight where he has a big health bar, a lot of posture to break, and a bunch of varying, though not complicated, attack patterns that you just have to endure while you're going through the fight, and try and bait him into doing the ones that you're more comfortable defending against. The second phase, he drops his armor, his sword gets lightning on it, and can now pierce your guard.
Because of course it can.
Because of course he can. And I did not beat him this way because I had not grasped this mechanic yet. They make you grasp it later. And I really wish they'd have done this before this boss, because it would have made the 3rd phase a lot easier. When he wreaths his sword in lightning and swings it, it cuts through guard, deflect, parry, everything. It's going to do damage to you. The only way to avoid it is to get completely behind the boss, which is what I opted to do, because I hadn't quite wrapped my head around this other mechanic yet. Or be hit with it deliberately in the air while locked onto him, and then press the attack button, and you'll shoot the lightning back at him.
Huh.
This becomes a common mechanic when enemies start using lightning later, where you need to not be touching the ground for any reason when lightning's going to be thrown at you. Because if you are, you get stunned and you take a truckload of damage. If you get hit in the air, you take a fraction of the damage you would have taken and can hit them back for almost half their vitality bar and stun them.
Well, you wouldn't want to be a path to ground now, would you?
No. I'm positive that's what they were going for with this. But it just is not something that clicked with me, so I had to do this whole 3rd phase with his health and posture bar are about 33% shorter in this one, so it's not quite as big of a slog as the first 2 phases. But I had to do it while dodging an undodgeable and unblockable attack. An unparryable attack.
Unpleasant.
Yeah. So the solution to that was just don't be in the position to be hit by it in the first place. Which is easier said than done. So the game has another weird quirk to it. There are 2 factors that are going to make the game significantly easier for you as you're progressing through it and make the game start going a lot faster. The first is you're just going to get better at the game. If you can't parry stuff, you're not getting past Genichiro, period, end. You're not beating the boss. You lose. That's the end of your game. So by the time you've beaten him, regular parrying on enemies is trivial. It's a thing that's just as muscle memory. You know how to read an attack now, and you know how to parry it. So you're going to get better right after Genichiro just from that. The other thing is certain upgrades make the game way, way, way easier, even though they're not strictly speaking statistical boosts. Even if you're fighting new enemies, just giving you a new way to approach them, like getting the spear sub-weapon that costs spirit emblems to use, but you can shoot the thing out and drag enemies back towards you and deal a good chunk of vitality and posture damage, makes dealing with enemies that are dangerous up close way easier. Getting the talent that gives you health back when you perform a death blow, stuff like that makes it so you ain't got to chug healing pots, and that's your only source of how can I keep going in this level before I got to go rest again. You can just keep going like the Energizer Bunny. And you'll just get little upgrades like that over time will start to accrue and don't seem very big in the moment you get them. They'll be significant and you'll notice them like, oh, that's a really good purchase. But they start to add up really, really, really fast. Especially when you start to get a lot of them. And all of a sudden, this game that was impossible is now playing like muscle memory, and the standard enemies are not a big deal anymore. You're basically chewing your way to bosses. And for a while, once I hit that click point and had all the upgrades that made things way easier, even the bosses were a joke. Some of them were really easy, actually. But until that click point, yeah, everything murdered me. Absolutely destroyed me. It was a total of 4 hours on Genichiro between 2 days. I actually beat him the morning of the next day, right before work. I turned on the game before I went in. And it took 3 attempts and I beat him when my head was clear and fresh.
Nice. So,
always, if you're having trouble like that on a grind and you're losing progress instead of gaining it, just go take a nap. Has always been my recommendation. And it works in this game too. So I have chewed up through the entire game up to the very last boss and the optional super hard boss, who I'm going to beat because the game says it's optional. I see a tag that says you can beat this thing and therefore it's not optional. So I'm right at his door and need to go punch his face in. And then I need to go beat the final boss. Both of which I've heard are incredibly difficult.
You go boop him in the snoot.
Yeah. The optional boss is a big fiery demon dude who looks like a giant orangutan.
What?
And, yeah. Monkeys are a thing in this game.
So not Santa Claus this time.
No. You don't fight Santa Claus. Although Santa Claus was a really, really fun fight. To be fair. And it seems like a lot of what Sekiro does takes inspiration from some of the stuff Santa Claus was doing. Like, the closest thing in the Souls series to a Sekiro fight is Santa Claus. Not because of Deflect, but just because of the way he moves and the way he attacks you. And how you have to respond to it. But in the last boss, I don't have a clue. I haven't spoiled the main story for myself, only the side stuff. Because, as is FromSoft tradition, they don't tell you jack crap about the side stuff. You gotta figure it out yourself.
They're good at that.
Yeah, they're real good at that. So yeah, most bosses that were not pushovers. The only pushovers I can think of off the top of my head were the rematch with the monkey. And there's a monkey. You cut his head off, and then he picks his head back up, and he fights you with his head in his hand.
What?
And the sword you cut off his head with. And then you fight him again, and he brings his wife with him this time. So you fight 2 big monkeys. Yeah, it's weird. He is the WTF boss of the game. I'm sure there is some part of Eastern mythology that I don't know that totally clarifies what the heck's up with that monkey. I don't get it. Maybe some Journey to the West BS or some reference in the minutiae of the text I don't know about.
I don't think Sun Wukong ever got decapitated.
I don't know, man. Like, the story in Dark Souls didn't make any sense, so...
Yeah, but most of it was based on something in mythology, especially with Bloodborne. But not in...
Not strange, decapitated monkeys.
Not in-universe. The in-universe lore is always hot garbage, and people that try to make sense of it are people to laugh at.
But there are people who make meme cartoons about it.
Yes.
They're okay. They can keep going. They clearly understand that it is just completely illogical and irrational to try and make sense of the little tidbits of lore they give you. But, yeah, what else? Sekiro is just a really, in general, just a challenging game, and the only solution is get good. That's it. It's not like Dark Souls. You can't cheese fights. In almost every single fight in Dark Souls, if you go online, there's a guide that'll tell you how to cheese it.
Mm-hmm.
Or the timing involved in beating it is not entirely difficult. Or it's Dark Souls 2 and it's just a bad game. Even the Souls fans don't like Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
But yeah. One thing I did like that FromSoft did in this game, they finally cut that online crap out.
Oh, good.
They have realized that it's not their strength and have focused their entire development time on single-player stuff, and it shows. The level design is much better when it doesn't have to have random arenas that accommodate for PvP. It is much more... They're able to be much more... What's a good word for it? Intimidating with the enemy placement in an area. When you go to an area and see 7 gunmen that you have to somehow deal with, but without aggroing the big fatties in an area, you can do stuff like that when you don't have to worry about random players popping into somebody's game coming to kill them.
Yeah, it always kind of struck me as an annoying afterthought.
Yeah. But it was still accounted for in level design in the Souls games that, PvP might happen here. In Sekiro, they don't have to worry about that. They don't care. And that is just a huge boon to the game, where it is... they don't have to worry about the PvP crap. They could focus all the level design on single-player stuff and making genuinely interesting to diverse areas, which has continued to be the case throughout the entire game. The last area I was at was incredibly fun. It was an area that had these little dudes playing flutes, and it was a bunch of like Japanese-style buildings surrounding a big lake with a giant carp in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. If you tried to swim in the lake, you'd get shot by lightning.
What?
So you had to go find the mini boss that was just put there to throw lightning at you anytime you swam in the water. And you had to find a way. Then you had to find a way to deal with the koi in the water to make them go away. And then you had to kill the big giant carp by feeding it a special kind of bait and stuff like that. And it was just interesting to find how much the level kept opening up more and more and more as you went through the level and kept doing stuff in it. Like, the mini boss is gone. Okay, I can swim now. Okay, all the koi are gone. Okay, now I just got to dodge the carp while I'm in the lake, but I can navigate further out now and actually swim down a bit. Okay, the carp's gone now. Now I can completely explore this dumb lake and see what all's down here. And stuff like that. And that's not even touching the on-surface stuff, like the stuff you can do with the people that play flutes, where if you get anywhere close to them, they'll start playing the flute. And if you stay near them too long, you just die. That's it. You'll get a little bar that fills up, and if they're playing their flute, the bar fills up. And unless you land a killing blow on something, that bar keeps filling up. So you have to find ways to chain kills together so that their flute music can't kill you.
What you're describing sounds very strange.
It does, doesn't it? You get kind of tootled to death.
Yeah, you see little lines getting sucked from you as they play their flute.
Vampire flutes.
Did you ever see the Looney Tunes version of the Pied Piper of Hamelin?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I have.
Yeah,
the
likewise.
Speedy Gonzales and Sylvester. Oh.
No.
It had basically it wasn't strictly a version of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, but it was the gag that Sylvester used to try and get Speedy Gonzales, is he had to stand outside the mouse hole with a flute and just play it, and then when a mouse came out, he would clonk them on the head with the flute and knock it out, and then he'd just stick the mouse in a bottle, and then he'd start playing again until the next one came out.
Yeah, that sounds outright for Looney Tunes.
Yep. Oh dear. But yeah, in general, I'm liking a lot of things about this video game. This game was built for the niche of people that like the Metroid style of exploration and like to thoroughly explore areas and like difficult and challenging combat. If you like those two things, this game's for you, period. If you're okay with getting good and that being a requirement, play it. It's a good video game. If you're not...
It sounds like it doesn't just outright cheat at points either. Like other forms of games.
I mean, there's still what they call poop box detection instead of hitbox. But this is mostly because the way, if you dodge like a grab incorrectly, the grab is still going to hit you because you're supposed to jump with most grabs. And if you dodge it, this makes the monster spin incredibly fast to make sure the grab lands.
What?
And do some really silly looking animations because you cannot dodge grabs by dodging. You have to jump.
Okay.
Or you have to be dodging way out of the way and double step. You cannot just do a single dodge. And if you just single dodge to get out of the way of a grab, yeah, the monster's going to whip around and do some wonky tracking shenanigans on you to make sure that grab lands.
That's rather silly.
So you do have to get used to the usual FromSoft jank like that. That is still in the game. But in general, the enemies are more fair with their stuff in telegraphs, mostly just because you're trained to respond faster in this game. Like, out of the gate, stuff in this game is attacking you faster than anything that was in Bloodborne. Like, the fastest enemies in Bloodborne are the slowest enemies in Sekiro.
Right.
Like, the fastest boss in Bloodborne, Lady Maria, or Orphan Akaz, are about mid-tier enemies in Sekiro. You're just trained to react a lot faster, and this teaches you to look at the tells more closely and just know how to react sooner. It just has a very good way of teaching you through just do it until you get it right.
That works.
And there's no real magic trick to it. It's just do it until you get it right. You're going to screw up. You're going to screw up for hours. There is no two ways about this.
But Ari, I have made Dark Souls skills.
Yeah, Dark Souls is easy. And I'm going to labor this point a lot in the coming months, the more Sekiro comes up. Dark Souls is not hard. Dark Souls 3 is not hard. Dark Souls 1 is not hard. Dark Souls 1 has BS level design. That is not hard.
Yeah, it does. Dark Souls 2 is just bad.
Dark Souls 2 is just stupid. And Dark Souls 2, I think I died maybe a whopping 3 times.
Yeah.
While exploring, and only really took multiple attempts on the stupidly overpowered bosses on purpose. Like, Dark Souls 2 was not a difficult game at all. Dark Souls 3 has some bosses that are challenging, but overall the game is not that bad to get used to. It is nothing compared to Sekiro. Bloodborne especially has some bosses that you just can kind of, once you get in the rhythm of that game, you're just going to blow through the rest of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have iframes in this game that are anywhere close to what they were in Dark Souls. In Dark Souls and Bloodborne, you're taught the incredibly counterintuitive muscle memory, dodge into attacks.
Yes.
Because your iframes are active and the attack is passing through you at the same time, so by the time that your iframes are inactive, the attack's on the other side of you now. And you're taught this over and over again in Dark Souls and Bloodborne. And that is just going to destroy you in this game. It's going to get you killed. Like, it's not just going to screw you up a little bit, it's going to get you killed. That's it. That's your life. Go back to the statue and run up to the boss again.
You did.
You have to unlearn that very fast, or if you're not super versed in Souls combat, just don't pick up on it at all. Don't treat that dodge button like a get out of jail free card. It's not. It is there for very, very specific getting out of the way of specific attacks, or holding it down, turning your butt around, and running away from the thing that's about to kill you. So, and this is a problem a lot of Souls folks are having. But in general, Dark Souls is easier as a whole, just because you have better and more versatile options for avoiding damage. In this game, every single attack has a very specific way that you have to not have to counter it if you don't want to take damage. And if you do the wrong one, you're taking damage. And if you take damage at the start of a chain, or you take a big enough hit, that's game over. You got to do it again. And people just are like, oh, it's just so, I'm a Dark Souls master and I'm having trouble with this game, so it's clearly the game's fault. No, it's your fault. There's nothing in this game.
Being a Dark Souls master appears to consist of knowing where the roll button is.
Yes.
Yeah, and you see this all the time on these quote-unquote Dark Souls masters of the game. They're like, I played all the Dark Souls games. I'm like, shut up, I played Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3 too, and I'm telling you right now, you're bad. I was bad at the start when I started playing this game too. You got to get good again.
You got to get
Quit
good
complaining.
all over again.
Honestly, it's a whole lot of people complaining over nothing.
It would actually
like
be boring if you just used exactly the same skills going from Dark Souls to Sekiro. Like, you
It
don't
seems
use
to be
the
what
same
they
skills
want.
going from
It's
Dark
like-
Souls to Bloodborne.
It's a From Software game. That means this is my time to brag about how skilled I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like all these people are really posting their Dark Souls plats over is because they want the e-cred for it. They want to e-flex how good they are at Dark Souls. No, this game is not made for you. This game is made for people that actually enjoy difficult stuff and don't need to brag about it. That's the people that are going to be beating this game week 1.
Yes.
And playing through it like this. And I'm having a blast with this game. And yeah, at first you're going to die. A lot. This is what you sign up for when you buy this video game. If you're buying a FromSoft game and you don't notice the big point on the contract that says, I'm going to take hours of my life and sacrifice them dying repeatedly to bosses and enemies in this game until I get good, why are you buying a Dark Souls game?
Yes.
Or not Dark Souls game, a FromSoft game.
Thankfully, the gigantic asterisk at the end of that is dying to not being good or crappy game design has been removed now.
And all of the crap, a whole lot of the FromSoft usual culprits have been removed that are just garbage gameplay mechanics or garbage in their engine. And that goes for both the player and the enemy. They telegraph more clearly, and you have to respond a very specific way. You can't cheese them. They give you the firecrackers if you really want to try cheese strats. Like, there are firecrackers you can throw at enemies and you can stun them up to 3 times per fight. And even then, that isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. It'll stun the boss 3 times per fight, but it has wind-up on it and takes forever to throw and delay on its activation. So you have to place those appropriately, and that's only about 2 or 3 hits on the boss's vitality, and that's not their posture. Posture is what you need to break to kill the boss. Vitality going down just means the posture doesn't regenerate as fast if you get out of combat for a while. And you disengage to heal or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's been so funny. Games journalists, Dark Souls fans, quote-unquote, generic social media e-flexers, all these people complaining about Sekiro and how many problems the game has. Game's fine if you know what you signed up for, people. We signed up for a FromSoft game. Do you guys just want to blast through the game? Because I guarantee you same people would be complaining that it's too easy if we got another Bloodborne or Dark Souls.
Well, they want to be able to complain to that because that's flexing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're making a mistake if you think that games journalists are complaining about that. Like games journalists aren't complaining about that. Games journalists were complaining about Dark Souls being too hard. Like,
oh yeah,
most of what I'm seeing is that basically, From Software doesn't respect their players. If they did, they'd put an easy mode in.
Oh, I saw that article. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was.
That's the timber of the games journalists ones. You got to remember that these people can't. They were not able to make it through the tutorial of Cuphead.
Yeah.
This is not on the same scale as being able to tell the difference between the difficulty of Dark Souls and Sekiro. This is a different tier entirely.
Yeah. There's just something out there to be said for having a game where there isn't an easy way out. You just have to learn it and get good at it and be one of the few people that can do it. There's a personal sense of accomplishment if you can do that.
Well, the thing is that
and these people don't
it's one
get
thing
that.
to say that there's only a few people can do it, right? Like you can say that, but the reality is that probably anybody who was willing to put in the time could do it.
Well, yes,
if they practice, because like back when gaming was a niche hobby, and there weren't that many of them. It was a case of like everybody who called themselves a gamer could clear Super Mario effortlessly.
Yeah. But what I was roping willing to as well into that. But yes. But yeah, just the fact that, I have the patience to sit down and do this. I have the ability to learn what the game's asking me to learn. That's something that goes on the gaming shelf as something I had fun doing and learning and being successful at. For people...
Games journalists, you have to remember, they thought that the combat in Mass Effect was too hard and needed to have a cutscenes only mode.
Yeah. That game, the combat in that game was like playing a walking nap. It was that boring. And easy.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to see some game journalists try to fight Kulu Yaku. That should be hilarious.
The games journalists. to be fair, I would probably die to Kuliyaku right now. I'm so out of practice.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being out of practice and just being bad.
Yeah, but it's just been a series of depressing headbangs onto the desk, reading some of this stuff, and laughing out loud at how dumb some people are trying to blame the game. This is the cleanest, fairest FromSoft game we've had. It's just way faster and way harder than the other ones that have come out before it.
Well, it's not paced with a stamina bar in mind, and I think there are a lot of people who expected, oh, well, I don't have to watch my stamina anymore. That means this is going to be easy, right?
No, that means the game moves literally twice as fast. Maybe sometimes more, oftentimes more, 3 times as fast in the case of bosses. Like, so it's just so many people on the Souls Reddit are like, I'm going to clear this day one. And then the very next day, I took a peek at the Reddit and I saw, well, I was going to clear this in one day, but I got stuck at Genichiro. And this seems to be the story. Either they get stuck at the first mini-boss because they haven't learned how to parry or come up with any of the mini solutions in the environment to take care of that guy. Stealth-attacking him, backing away. You can sprint out that guy. There's a bunch of stuff you can do to that boss. And then they get to Genichiro and he's just like, okay, I have every single type of attack in the book, up to and including ranged attacks. Have you got a handle on all of them? We've been teaching them to you this whole game.
Too bad, training wheels off.
Yeah, the playtime's over. Let's see if you learned.
Nope.
And people just
they threw firecrackers at everything.
They probably and if you try to do that with Genichiro, it'll work 3 times, and that's it. And I would highly advise that you save them for the last phase.
Fun.
So, yeah, Sekiro has been entertaining in more than one way. Watching the shenanigans of people talking about it online has been half the fun of Sekiro.
Yeah, that's really become a phenomenon over the past 6-12 months, is watching what people say about games that have just come out, rather than actually playing them, has become a source of entertainment in and of itself. Like,
yeah.
the amount of lols that were had out of watching coverage of Fallout 76 and of Anthem and so forth. Like, I've gotten so much entertainment out of those, I don't think I need to play those games.
Incidentally, apparently Todd Howard's put out another statement about Fallout 76, and I haven't read it yet, so that might be something to laugh at next week.
Todd the liar.
Yeah, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. But
yes.
yeah, Sekiro is not a long game. I'll close with that. There are 16 mini-bosses and 16 bosses, I think.
Okay, that's not long.
And you don't fight all the bosses on each route of the game. 2 or 3 of them are locked behind specific endings of the 4 endings. Some of them overlap within those endings, but I think you need to do at least 2 full playthroughs to have fought every single boss and mini-boss in the game.
All right.
But yeah. So yeah, I will. If you're curious as to what Sekiro plays like, I will not be talking during it because I'm not plugging in the dang PlayStation headset, but I will stream for a little bit at least a good chunk of attempts on the Demon of Hatred optional super boss at the end of the game after the show, and y'all can laugh at me die there.
It's a very enjoyable pastime, and Trials just happened to be very good for it.
I'm going to paint my whole base here pink because I can. Alright. We should probably get into some proper news, not just Sekiro.
Well, we deferred an important topic last week.
Yes, the Google Stadia.
Yes, the Google Stadia.
Yeah.
So this is Google's big entry into the game space. For years, many people contemplated the idea that Google would take their megabucks and try and make a hardware console in the conventional fashion.
Well, they still haven't.
No, they have not. And I'm not really surprised that they haven't, but they had something else in mind now. So they've invested a humongous amount of money in building massive data centers with enormous processing capacity. And they are basically going to try and do the OnLive thing again.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two factors which determine the success or failure, and we've seen universal failures of the OnLive concept. And the first is the amount of money to throw at the problem, because you need computing capacity and you need the marketing budget to convince people that it's a good idea to not sell them anything effectively, and have them come to you on bended knee every time they want to play a game. And the other thing that you need is infrastructure.
Yes.
And the two have always been lacking. And we're finally sort of encroaching on the era where there are large profitable population centers which have infrastructure capable of supporting the system, plus you have Google, which has more money than anybody else in this space. They are incredibly wealthy.
So if anyone is going to be at all capable of pulling this off, it probably has to be Google.
And theoretically, them running this would be like an enormous metrics generation juggernaut as well, which they'll be able to sell on the side.
Yep.
But yeah.
Right,
so
until they do something stupid.
So this is supposed to be the cloud gaming concept writ large, except they've put an enormous amount of power behind it, enough to significantly, if you operate at capacity, the amount of processing power they have significantly outmasses both of the leading consoles put together. And they've managed to show off, it's always the benchmarks that they present, but they don't have any special reason why, because I think that the numbers that they've got are achievable. But they've managed to get their latency down to comparable or better than the latency on a home console, particularly the Xbox, which is notorious for having bad screen to input latency, which is why nobody plays fighters on the Xbone at all.
Yeah,
like it's a waste. The Xbone is an FGC wasteland because there's so much latency between input and screen. But so they've already managed to pass that benchmark, which means that they're already operating in the space of having more power than a home console and having better latency than at least one of the major home consoles. So while there are still, there are insurmountable things such as like network stability in that for a given region. Basically, I think that in the main, for a given audience in built up urban areas, there is a market and they have the technology to do it. It's a live possibility now.
Yep.
The problem is that I don't think it's good. I don't think there's anything good. No good can come of this at all. So ultimately, what this would accomplish is the destruction of the home console market, and the thing is that not just console, but also the PC market would take a severe hit. And the reason for this is that what Google would be selling you would not be a console. It would have almost no technology in it whatsoever. It would just be a dumb terminal. This would be, from my point of view, incredibly bad for the games industry and for technology, the technological industry as a whole. Because what you're basically going to do is annihilate, if you become popular, if you actually manage to carve out a space in the market, you're going to annihilate the domestic graphics market fundamentally. It's going to put the squeeze on everybody, because if nobody needs to have a graphics processor to play the same games, it means that the companies that produce graphics processors, that research improvements in graphics processors, that actually drive the industry forward, they no longer have a reason to invest as much money because they can't turn as much profit because there's no domestic market anymore. The only person who is buying their product is now Google, and they only need enough for their data center to do the processing. So you end up with this situation where you have Google carves out of space, triggers mass market contraction, drives up the costs of everybody else's devices, and eventually takes over the market in a humongous monopoly. That's the natural outcome. This is not a nefarious plot that they could pull. This is the natural outcome of this course of action being successful. Cloud computing is a great idea in concept for distributed power being available to everybody. People can crunch things on they can have things crunched offsite for the delivery to them to their monitor using a simple dumb terminal, and they can basically for the price of trivial hardware can have access to the best hardware if they don't mind the fact that they don't own anything anymore. But you could drive the price down quite easily to the point where that would seem not to matter, considering the way everybody's going to games as a service and everybody has to pay for additional secondary services these days.
Mm-hmm.
This is all a very plausible future in which Google can carve out the space, and by simple weight of market forces that aren't associated with them doing a good job necessarily, just enough of a job, can force contraction everywhere else, because their success actively drives up the costs for everybody who is not them. That's the thing. And the thing is that there's no way to fault this as a plan on capitalistic terms, the way you can't fault the behavior of the EA store. It's just the EA store is behaving in a savage and aggressive way. They're buying out people. They're taking the hit up front in order to carve out a space in the market and run their own store. It does terrible things for the entire industry at the moment. Everybody hates it. Indie developers stand profitably from it because they'll be able to make games without as much financial risk and so on and so forth. And they are at least claiming that there will be a long-term trickle down of the money saved by developers to consumers, in the sense that games can theoretically be cheaper, although they won't, because the markets also don't work like that, but that more games will be able to get produced because, you know, there's less financial risk to start the project. In the case of Stadia, instead you have the opposite effect, where their success actually actively screws everybody else, whether or not they're in competition with that type of service. Because theoretically, cloud computing shouldn't be in competition with the advancement of home console technology. However, cloud computing puts the squeeze on it. Same with PC enthusiasts who want to build their own rigs to their custom specifications and play games on their own devices that they actually own. They will put the squeeze on them. And basically, this entire thing depresses the market in a horrible fashion, and eventually will flash back on Google itself, because they still have to have the technology. They have to purchase the technology, but they are destroying the market that produces it by degrees. So ultimately, a logical path for the success of Google is the downfall of Google Stadia in the long term. So what you're basically going to do is, in the short term, if you can gain success, the short term effect is monopoly, and the long term effect is another games crash.
Yeah.
Except driven by technology, which affect way more than just game. But the thing is that games drive a lot of development, because that's where all the domestic disposable income comes in. The demand for these top-end processors or graphics come in largely from gamers en masse. The most expensive games boards may be not calibrated for gaming because they're for design work, but the bulk of demand by volume is from gamers. Except that will all disappear if everybody moves off to the cloud. And from what the numbers look like, they might be able to actually pull off the technology on that level. They've only showed limited stuff, but yeah. The thing is that it's not a case of them being able to provide the same experience, though. Graphics enthusiasts will still not use the Stadia, because it's true, they can deliver and reproduce, you know, your 1080p or theoretically your 4K in the future. They probably can't shift that quite right now, but you could do it. But the thing is, and this is the thing that they don't mention in any of their promotional material because it would be suicide, is that you have to go through compression. You've got to compress the data and decompress the data, and decompressed 1080p does not look as good as a Blu-ray. Like,
let's face it looks like hot buttered butts.
Yeah, like anybody who is keen on visual fidelity, like you can look at a compressed and decompressed video that you've streamed over the internet and look at the Blu-ray version. The Blu-ray version is unambiguously nicer. This isn't some audiophile thing where you can't actually tell the difference. It's unambiguously nicer. And the thing is that Netflix tells us that the bulk of the market doesn't care about that. So it's not it will leave an extant market that is not being served if Google gains a monopoly in exchange for them satisfying a large number of people in the short term, and then eventually, as the technology starts to get strangulated, progress in games tech and graphics tech in general will stagnate. Like, this is all like long range doomsaying stuff, but these are all sort of natural outcomes from their success in the market, and that's basically what happens every time Google gets a pause on something and manages to create a monopoly. It's just, it strangulates everything around it. And the nature of the difference between cloud computing and the conventional style of computing is such that it affects everybody who isn't doing quite the same thing as them, but also needs that technology. So yeah, I think that the long-term conceptual outline for Stadia is unbelievably dangerous for the industry. Because the successful cloud computing, I think, is just a way of placing all of your gaming experience under the control of the Google collective.
Enough of my life is already ruled by Google as it is.
As opposed to the conventional approach, which was to, by way of research, innovation, technology, clever design, clever coding, to improve the delivery of the product by making it cheaper so that people could buy better and better cards. Like, I mean, a graphics card today compared to a graphics card 10 years ago, I mean, the difference is unbelievable. The advancement is incredible. And this is the way we've been progressing up till now. To abstract that out to the control of one corporation who doesn't really have a vested interest in providing the experience, because they don't need people to buy the experience, they just need people signed up to the service and then to become the only service. Which is the way Google does things. They don't operate by competing, they operate by establishing a monopoly. So
they'll bully the market, they'll bully governments until they get their way.
Yeah, so this is not going to be good for anybody. I can't see any good outcome to this. Not really, not in the long term. In the short term, it will allow people who weren't enthusiasts to play games that they don't have the technology to play, but I hope that market's not big enough. I really do. The real question which determines the success of this, other than how much money Google is to throw at it, is the size of the category of normies who don't really care that much, and how many developers are developing for that audience. Because we've seen what happens when you try and do a radical audience shift, right? Like Marvel, basically, for instance. They tried to do a radical audience shift with their comics and pander to a bunch of SJWs who don't buy comics, and it didn't work. If the market of people who want to play a game that they don't have the power for, but also don't care enough about the fidelity and performance to want it local, like the question is that how big is that market? Like, is that market bigger than everybody playing RuneScape? Like, that's the thing.
How many people still play RuneScape?
Quite a lot.
Probably a lot, because Jagex actually had the brains to release WoW Classic, and then develop it in parallel using its old philosophy, so that they get to keep collecting money from the people who are offended by the successor to RuneScape, unlike Blizzard.
Which is also RuneScape, by the way.
Yeah.
Everybody has a mother or an aunt that used to be really top tier in RuneScape too. You ever notice that?
My great aunt was one of the top 10, yeah.
My mother was one of the top. Yeah, my mother's one of the top 40-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
But you see, that's the thing though, right? Like, most of those types of things, you don't need much oomph to play them. That casual demographic, they don't really care about visual fidelity, they don't care about the flash and bang. Like, you don't need much oomph. You don't need to have an off-site processor with the power of two home consoles put together in order to generate RuneScape. But I don't want, like, the glory of something, even like Monster Hunter on the PS4. I don't really want that to be passed through the compression filter and arrive on my screen nice and muddy, even if it does work smoothly, which I can't count on because I live at the bottom of the world.
Yeah, but, just even that, like, internets have spots in them sometimes. Like, we talk about how Sekiro is fair with it every time it kills you, but if there's a lag spike because I'm streaming the game on Google's whatever device.
Really?
And
Yeah.
Google's what kills me because of my input lag or because the screen got delayed. Oh no, that ain't good.
Re-begin.
I get mad enough when games kill me for reasons that are based on their internal logic without having to deal with Google as well. No, thank you.
It would make a very convenient scapegoat for every single time everybody died in a video game, though.
True.
Yeah, it would. Like, it would be the only thing that ever happened in casual fighting game.
Oh, Google killed me.
Yeah, it was not my fault. The Google disconnected me.
It's
not like I didn't hit the power button on my console.
Google
it has
lag.
nothing to do with me not wanting my my rating to go down. Nope.
But
yeah, it's the thing is that the technology has incredible implications. There's so much could be done with that if you can deliver that sort of computing power right into people's homes. It's just that in practice, it does no good for the games industry. Console wars and the like have driven technology for gaming forward. That sort of healthy competition of everybody wanting wanting people to buy their product, to buy their games, and so on and so forth. If you unify that in the Borg collective, and everybody just has to borrow the power to play borrowed games, like there's no rat race anymore. There's no competition. There's no reason to drive things forward, because eventually that monopoly becomes stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Kind of.
So yeah, basically the gist of my opinion on this is that the best case scenario is pretty much appalling. So I'm not that amused by it. It already chafes me, the fact that I have to pretty much buy into digital games purchases. Like, I could not buy Extella Link without buying digitally. It was not a thing. They don't sell it in New Zealand. You can't get it. Nope. So I have to jump on this bandwagon of always buying things that, I just have a license. I don't really own it. And, reading the license is actually in the game menu of Extella Link. Like, it's a feature there now. Because you don't really own things, you can go into the options menu and you can view license. So, this is the extent to which I own it. They allow me to play it sometimes. And if Steam decided all my games are going away tomorrow, they could do it and I'd have no legal recourse. I mean, there'd be a class action lawsuit and they'd probably be forced to back down because it seems so unfair, and there's still a certain amount of common law saying that you can't be a total cock. But
until that gets removed anyway.
Yeah, that's only, it's only there for now.
Until precedent gets set.
Yeah, it only has to be one judge that just doesn't understand or is malevolent, and then that's over. Their game is over. So, yeah. I don't like the way things are going. It seems to be the natural progression. It's not like it doesn't come with convenience. It would be super convenient for me to be able to play every game ever without ever needing to upgrade my system, because it was all happening for quote-unquote free off-site. But I don't want that. I like owning cool things. I like having a disc that I can stick in my PlayStation. It means I can play Monster Hunter, and it means I can play Monster Hunter more or less until their servers go down. Like, that's pretty much it. I have this product in my house.
Well, even then, you can still play it with the servers down. Yeah,
because just if you can't get a connection, then you just play offline. I mean, I won't be able to get any updates or anything, but that's it. Like, I miss that era. Like, I don't think games as a service has really brought us very much of anything that's been beneficial. The MMO genre as a whole is one that I enjoy, but it does not need to be ground down into a fine paste and then parted out into little, portions the size of wrapped sweets or something. Like, the games as a service is running amok, and I think most people can see it now. Like, that new COD thing, where it's a pay-to-play game with every imaginable monetization system all jammed into one game. Like, which is like Snidely Whiplash, basically, in terms of comical evil. That's the direction these publishers think is wise to go, and somebody must be propping it up, and that's what really gets my goat. Somebody's propping all this crap up. Somebody's buying all the Fortnite crap. Somebody's buying all the COD crap, and it's not worth a damn. Like,
stop buying this crap, people.
It has got to be people under the age of 30, and I bet you there's a bigger percentage of that market than we think that is kids stealing their parents' credit cards.
It's certainly a part of the market.
Like I have to cop to the fact that I would spend an ungodly amount of money on, bait crap for a game like Extella Link if it existed to buy, and there are some costumes in that, but I'm not fussed enough to buy them. Most swimsuits and stuff, and that's basically just fun. I'm not really point. But the thing is that that I'm enthusiastic enough to spend money on microtransactions for things that I like that, because they have a certain amount of gravity to them. Fortnite has zero gravity. Like, why do people buy those things? Are they trying to show off to other people that they have them? Is that what's going on? Because a lot of the stuff that gets sold in these juggernaut microtransaction games has like zero novelty value, really. It's just a thing. It's just a color or something like that. I don't really understand it, but these things are being supported in volume, staggering volume, enough that Fortnite is responsible for the Epic Games Store debacle that we're currently going through. But because kids are stealing their parents' credit cards, we now have the Epic Store. Like this is the line of causality that we're dealing with.
I mean, it's the only type of person that could justify throwing the raw amount of money that they would throw at this. Like, they would not feel any of the financial impact of their decisions.
Just, like, as a person who spends money on the gacha at times, like, I can understand the impulse. I can. But there are also times I don't spend money on the gacha, even even for things that I really want.
But that's not money you've already budgeted for free spending, at least in your head.
Well, I have my internal logics to rationalize it and so on, but
you do stretch those a bit thin sometimes, admittedly.
Not very often, though. So in some instances, it's a failure of will. But have you seen that thing it's an idea that's been patented recently to do with biometrics?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
The idea being that biometric systems for games, right? So that they can measure things of your reaction to games. The thing is, can you imagine that plumbed into microtransactions? So that they could measure when you were at your weakest and then offer you something in that moment?
Yeah, I actually could see that happening.
Can you imagine the sort of damage
pretty much already does that?
Can you imagine the sort of damage that would do to people's lives if they were, actively scanning your brain for the point at which your will was the weakest towards spending just an extra few dollars to get over something which had been infuriating you, or something to get something you were jealous of, or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what these people are going for. Like, how nefarious is that? How comically evil.
But that's only one step removed from what they're already doing now. Like, they've already got systems in games which analyze your behavior patterns. They listen to your microphones, and they will offer you things based on that.
But they can only guess at that. Their algorithm is relatively weak. That's why so many people overpower it with will.
Yes.
Children can't.
Children can't.
Children can't. That's why the children are the ones that are fueling this hell engine that is currently in operation. But once they're able to, for obviously for gameplay purposes, they read your biometrics, so scanning your bioelectrics through your controller or whatever as you hold it, in order to calibrate the gameplay. But in addition to that, they just gather a few metrics, and then suddenly they can read when your will is not strong enough to do that, and hit you there, then and there.
Here's what we do. Vol, you and me need to get together, and we need to make a product that screws with the internal chemistry of someone enough to get past the FDA, but mess with biometrics, and sell that to parents when this comes out, so they can force their kids to eat it before they play video games, so they don't get scammed.
It already exists, and it's called Ritalin, and it destroys kids.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. No.
Though if they've got it in the controller,
are all on it.
Yes, they are. Though if it's all just sensors in the controllers, just wear gloves.
No, this doesn't work. Like, have you never? You can use whatchamacallit. I use my phone with nitrile gloves, 2 layers of nitrile gloves on at work.
Wow.
That's what capacitive touch can do, and that's not calibrated to deliberately read anything particular from. So Yeah, like a couple pair of, I wear 2 layers of gloves, not 1, because you have to change gloves a lot of times when you're moving from clean zone to clean zone. So because when your hands get sweaty, you cannot put rubber gloves on.
No, it's impossible. It just doesn't happen.
But I still can operate my phone through 2 layers of rubber gloves. So you can't say, oh, you just wear gloves, that'll fall it. And besides, that's not what they're going to be going for. They're going to want to plug directly into your brain.
Oh yeah,
they're going to find a way of doing it. They're going to be able to like scan your brain's bloodstream via the PlayStation camera, looking at the back of your retina or something. Like, I don't know, but they'll find a way to do it, and they're going to basically hit the gambling addictive personality types right in the wallet. And destroy thousands of lives before somebody will allow the state to put in some overweening law which reaches too far and makes everything terrible. Like, it's just going to follow the same arc as always. The corporate suits will come up with something utterly demonic that could be turned to really cool purposes. Like, can you imagine what a survival horror game could do if it could read your precise mood?
It would make you wet yourself.
Yes, it would. But no, the suits aren't interested in the experience of the game. So they'll turn it some utterly demonic end.
We are indeed in the darkest timeline.
Now place all of that technology directly in the hands of the one company, Google, which now controls all gaming. Yeah. So this is the sort of the coalescence of technologies that I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
The console wars were a healthy competitive paradigm. Like, you can easily make an argument that consoles are a bad deal. They basically are for screwing stupid customers and so on and so forth. Like, lots of anti-console people can make that case. But what you can't deny is that having those devices all available made for a competitive environment where different platforms had their different advantages and allowed different.
Yeah.
The Google engine is basically a shoggoth which sublimates every type of gaming under their one off-site controlled product. And if they get that, then they have absolute control over content of games, over censorship of games, all of that stuff. That will come under their control, because if they are processing it all off-site, then they decide the terms and conditions of everything. And ultimately, if they get a decent market share, everybody will have to play by Google's rules.
Or play around Google's rules, which usually results in you crashing and burning.
So, I mean, they still have to get their foot in the door, and they may flunk out the way so many have before them, attempting to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's not just your own on-site technology you've got to work with on this. It's international infrastructure, it's governments, it's all sorts of other things.
The only glimmer of hope is that in order to get this sort of thing to work, you really do have to sell it to gamers if you care to keep that market existing. Like, there's still a market for video games as we play them. Like, despite all of the hoo-ha from the press establishment and from the Reddit dweebs, Sekiro is still a wildly popular game, even though it utterly sodomizes you given half a chance. So there is still a market for real games. The thing with Google is, like, do they capture that market? Do they capture that market? Because that's the market that really drives the technology. So people who want that sort of stuff. Like, will that exist alongside what Google is doing? Or can Google seize the initiative and somehow get a hold of all of those people as well?
Yeah.
They're a tiny slice of the market, but they really operate as a keystone to the gaming thing, in a sense. Like, you need to have a crown jewel in order for your crown to be worth a damn. And so you end up with blockbusters, which are sort of boutique blockbusters. Like, since I'm playing it right now, I'll use it as an example. But Monster Hunter World serves that purpose to an extent. It's a sort of a niche game, but it's also sort of iconic, occupying a particular place in gamingdom. And they've managed to, conveniently for them, strike a good balance between having depth for the hardcore and accessibility for the new people. So you've got the sort of like a very tightly designed title. However, there's still nothing there for the casual, like the super casuals, who are happy playing whatever, happy playing RuneScape. Like
But
the
don't
people
they-
that are easy to snare won't be snared by it.
Yeah.
So there's a certain room for people to oppose a total domination by Google. Like it could happen. There are glimmers of hope. This isn't a foregone conclusion. There are a number of things that could go wrong for Google. I just think that the things going right for them have a lot of bad ends. A lot of bad ends in that story. Not very many good ends.
I think that we just need to hit a point in our culture where parents have to teach their children the consequences of spending money at an earlier age, and that'll put a big damper on this real fast.
Oh, come on. The last 30
ideally-
years have been leaning towards parents taking absolutely no responsibility whatsoever.
Well, it's because the government does it these days. That's the thing.
Yes.
Everybody wants every school to be public and perfectly regulated by the government, and teachers are basically, that abstracted out child rearers and so on. And the lobby groups don't want parents to be able to control their kids' development because they might teach their kid to be homophobic or something, or whatever passes for homophobic these days. But yeah, there's a lack of parenting, I suppose, in certain quarters, and I think that's the problem. It's not about specifically teaching them the value of money, although that's an important life skill parents should be instilling in children. But I think that parenting in general, in a lot of sectors, has really dropped off because of this weird paternalistic government phenomenon, which has been spreading over the past few.
Anywho, we are at time. We're actually a little bit over. Well, yeah, we're all at time now because we started a little bit late.
Right, let's wrap up.
Alrighty. Closing comments, go.
Who wants the lurgy? I have free lurgy for anyone who wants it.
Not me. I might have work to do next week. Give it to Vol. He can hang on to it for a week.
No, I don't want. Do not want.
Do not want the lurgy. Do not want the ick. Nobody wants
Please
the
don't
ick.
give that to me right now. It is very likely I will hit crunch time again.
Yeah. You have way too many crunch times. Stop it.
It happens always in bursts like this.
You
Always.
got overtime pay though. It's not all
I
bad.
I did ring out a whole extra paycheck out of my boss.
That's not bad.
3.5 all-nighters in 1 week will do that.
Yeah. Yep, it will.
I was pretty mad going into work the next day when I told him how long this was taking. When I was near the end of it. He's like,
What was he
"Okay."
doing? Playing PlayStation?
Yes.
Ah.
He hadn't gone into the office yet, and I walked in the home office. I'm like, bleep, I have been working for literally 65-ish of the last 72 hours. Non-stop on this thing. Give me money. That is pretty close to the exact wording, although the tone and phrasing was different. More exasperated and much angrier. I gave him the activity log on our QuickBooks account too to show him I wasn't kidding. He's like, oh, okay. But yeah, closing comment is Sekiro might be my new favorite Soulsborne game just because of how angry it makes all the e-flexing Soulsborne fanboys.
Anything that makes the e-flexing Soulsboys fanboys is angry is a good thing in my book.
Yep.
Because they are some of the most insufferable people you could hope to meet.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Anything else?
No.
Alrighty. I will try to wrangle together a stream after the show, and I'll go punch a big demon for about an hour or so. And if you would like, you can watch me die many times. Many times. Probably. Alright. We'll be back next week, folks. Sayonara. Bye-bye.